am happy to be with you this evening, and I want to give all thanks and honor to the Creator, revealed to all and known by many names, that we are able to gather in a place such as this, unmolested, to talk about what we want to talk about, those things that concern us. I remember one playwright wrote, I believe it was Ossie Davis, in the play Pearly Victorious, when they were talking, and the sister said to the brother, said, being colored sure is a lot of fun when white folks ain't around. And those are my sentiments exactly. It's one of the few times in our everyday lives that we can be ourselves. When we come to our own Afrocentric institution, our own Afrocentric events and gatherings. And so I'm glad to be here to share this moment with you tonight. I want to give special thanks and honor to all those who have put their life on the line and many who have given their lives for the liberation of African people throughout the ages, especially since we have been here in the belly of the beast of North America and South America too. I want to give thanks, and wherever we are in the world today, and giving them honor because their names are legion. Time would fail. We'd be here for years just running the whole list of them who had only just begun. So I would say, in the words of the last poet, blessed are those who struggle. Oppression is worse than the grave. It is better to live and die for a noble cause than to live and die a slave. Having done that, let us prepare to discuss our subject matter for this evening, which is entitled African Woman, the Original Guardian Angel. Now, some may wonder how I came upon a title like that. And people have written to me and asked me, Brother BARASHANGO, how do you come up with these titles for these books? So, well, what I do, as Bishop Olu well knows and any other clergyman knows, when, or any person who's spiritually connected, when you need to know something, you go to the source that knows everything. And some folks say you can't question God. I can. After all, that's the force that knows everything. Where you gonna go? Who you gonna question? So I will do what we used to say in the seminary, take it to the woods. I had just finished a work, completed a work entitled African Genesis and Historical Reality, which took a year to write. What started out to be chapter one ended up being stretched into 7 chapters. The outline must have been changed over a dozen different times. I didn't know which way this book was going. This was truly a situation, as one writer has said, where the author starts out writing the book and the book ends up writing you. About quarter way into the project, the book took over. And I realized at this time I am merely an instrument. Every day I'd have to take it to the woods. Where do I go now? I want to go this way. You have me. Finally, the work was finished. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could see it shaping up. When the work was finished, I realized after a year of writing and research that I had a major project in my hands which were going to take major bucks to produce. When we looked at our resources which were available, they were not commensurate to what was necessary to produce this work. I'll go back in the woods again. So, well, brother, why you always go in the woods? Because that's, I'm at home in any house of worship where African people are. But the house of worship that I personally am most at home in is the woods, where the water running, the squirrels and the birds, and we're in the tree leaves, and we're all worshiping together. So I went out in the woods. I stayed a good while this time because I needed to know something. So now, Lord, I appreciate the fact that you gave me the knowledge, the energy, led me in the right directions in my research, and had people who could share information with me that I complete the project. Now, how do I get it before the people? I'm at an impasse here. Well, after talking like that and getting it off me and getting a sense of peace while I was standing by the running water, I got a sense of peace about it. After I laid it at the feet of the Creator, I knew it was going to be all right. But I also knew this. You don't take it to the Lord and leave it there and come home and sit down. Once you leave it there, what do? You go pick up something else. You go back and you work on something, because the answer to every problem, every situation in your life is generally found in what you do and how well you do it. So I went back to work on something else. And then it came like a bolt of lightning. Say, take the chapters dedicated, the 2 specific chapters that are dedicated to the black woman's creation of. I said, what? Come on, talk to me now. Don't leave me standing out here alone. Creation of an ongoing contribution to world civilization. Take those chapters, the main chapters, because I talked about it throughout the whole book, and put with those the material you delivered in Richard Allen City, misnomer Philadelphia, on the African origin of angels at several seminars and workshops there, and the message you recently delivered at Howard University. Put those all together, and this is what I want you to call it. I said, what you want me to call it, Lord? Say, call it this: African woman, the original guardian angel. So when I heard that, I said, solid. The Lord said, solid. We gave each other 5. I went out in the house, start working on the project. That's how we type, you know. That's how we do it. You know, the Creator's hip. He's got to be hip to make human beings, to deal with human beings. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to be down, up, everything. You know? So that's how the book, African Woman, the original guardian angel, came into being. And what we will do tonight is deal with some of the high points from this work with some attending material and comments. Is that all right with you? Now, let me clear this up so I can have a little more room. We're starting in this work about 200,000 years before the present. Now, in the larger work, African Genesis and Historical Reality, I went back 4.6 billion years ago and worked up to 18,000 before the Common Era. In this work, you can see why I'm very busy. In this work, that's a lot of years to cover. In this work, we're just starting at the point 200,000. Now, we know that human beings, as we know them, were in existence on planet Earth perhaps 2 million years ago. We know this also for a fact, unequivocally, and that is they existed first on the continent of Archebuland, misnomer Africa, the mother continent, before they existed anywhere else in the world. For some reason, the Creator decided, and I believe I know what that reason is. I believe you do too. And Mother Nature and all the forces on Earth which worked together and went through their series of geological changes until this planet was formed in a manner that be able to sustain and to nurture and to supply the human's every need, so that the human could continue to evolve and rise to oneness with the cosmos. All these changes took place over a process of billions of years, and when it decided that everything is right, just right for this process, and to deliver and bring forth humanity on the earth, the forces of nature and the Creator looked on the planet and said, where is the one place that is the best place for human beings to come forth from? And all the heavens sang, all the planets sang, and they all sang the song together. Africa, 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 and that's where it was, the home of all humans. And no scientist of his right mind, black or white, can deny that reality. Anyone who attempts to deny that reality is looked upon as a fool, because it's inescapable at this point. Well, there is some discussion among scholars as to whether 2 million years ago the Sinjanthropus boise, or man of the black coast in East Archebuland, was in fact a completely modern human as we know them today. Well, we know this, even if there is some discussion and there's some disagreement on that, we must all agree on a fact that is inescapable. That by 200,000 years ago, in the southeast portion of the mother continent, at that time, humanity had developed to the stage which scientists call Homo sapiens sapien, or modern man. Those are Latin, Greek, Greco-Latin words for wise man. Of course, there's a lot of question about that when you look at humanity sometimes. But 200,000 years ago, the first modern humans developed on the mother continent there in the southeast. And among that group of humanity there was the woman who was destined to become the mother of every human being that ever lived on planet Earth. And that was the African woman, because it is from her mitochondrial DNA. That type of DNA, diaribonucleic acid, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Am I close to it? Ribonucleic acid, that's what it is. Ribonucleic acid, that's what it is. My daughter, who's in the medicine, she would tell you, she knows how to say it. I'm not a medical doctor. You know what I'm talking about. The genetic material which it programs the genes and determines what a person will be. Well, there's an element of that which is illustrated by artists in a copy of the Newsweek. I believe it was in January, I don't remember the year now, some time ago, where they had the heading "In Search of Adam and Eve," and they had the black man and woman on the cover. Something we had known all along, but it was acceptable once Newsweek put it out. Well, they have a diagram in there where they show a cell that makes up the human body, and they show in that cell the nucleus of the DNA, which can be found in male and female. But there are other chemical elements called mitochondrial DNA, which can only be found in the female and can only be inherited through one's mother. That is why it was easier to find who the mother of the world was than it was to find who the father. Well, we know if the mother of the world was an African woman, and there were no other people on earth at that time 200,000 years ago but African people, obviously it had to be the father. And Sapphire was far more particular then than she is now sometimes. He had to have soul. When the Neanderthal would try to get next to her, a half-human creature would try to get next to her, she'd put her hand on her hip and say, hey, you come up there talking about, ugh, ugh. She said, baby, you don't come out your mouth with the wrong thing. He couldn't even talk, and you know if you can't talk, you can give it up. If you're trying to talk to sweet Sister Sapphire. This DNA, mitochondrial DNA, which was in the mother, also shows to us scientifically the reason why in the ancient world the woman was revered above all creatures on the earth. The man was respected and revered as well, so brothers, don't get insecure about it. The fact of history is the most revered person on earth for thousands of years upon thousands of years was the African woman. And the first worshipped being on earth was the African woman. This is historical. Again, let me make this very clear to you. I'm not attacking anyone's system of belief. I didn't come to convert you to this or that, or to get you to join anything but yourself. The only thing I'm seeking to help sell here tonight is African people on African people, on themselves. That's all I got to sell tonight. Some more books and tapes. You'll appreciate that. Well, now, between 180,000 and 90,000 before the present, these Africans began to migrate from the mother continent to other parts of the world. And some scientists say, the Emory scientists at Emory University And scientists at Berkeley, genetic scientists at Berkeley, California, said that this group of Africans who began to migrate all over the globe carried with them a special advantage over all other creatures on the earth. If you don't want to take my word for it, white folks said it. We had a special advantage. We were better than anything else on the earth at that time. That's what they said. So you won't think that Brother Shaka being a racist or being mean or anything. Now, again, I must emphasize that there were no Caucasians anywhere on the earth. Why is that important? Now, you may not think this is important for you to know, but it is important for our children to know that. Why? Because we're being taught and continue to be taught over and over again that anybody who ever did anything worthwhile and the beginning, the seminal beginning of all things on earth, whatever they are, emanated from white people. And historically and scientifically, this is not true. It simply is not true. Well, what difference does it make? You go to church all the time and say, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And that word truth is used there, comes from the Greek words used in the New Testament, meaning according to the facts. If you know the facts of a situation, you can what? Better deal with it. If you have this knowledge about yourself, you can walk tall in the world, and no matter what they do to you, they can mess with the body, but they cannot touch your soul. But you know you're the king and queen of the universe. He can jump all around, threaten the fire, do anything he want to do. But as long as you know who you are actually in control of the situation. You can lay back and watch that watch that white man go through any kind of antics he want to go through. And you can be cool. Can't move you because you're one with the one, the unmoved mover. What they used to sing, I shall not be moved, like a tree planted by the waters. I shall not be moved. And when you know who you are, when you know your history and your right place in this planet, not only in this planet, but in the entire universe, then you're like a tree that is planted by the waters, and nothing can move you because the roots run deep, very deep, the deepest of all roots in the world. The oldest history of anybody on the planet belongs to you and your children. Therefore, if anybody has a right to the fruits of this earth, it is us, for they would not exist were it not for us. You all right? You with me? Somebody say amen. Let's church a little bit in here tonight. I know I'm a historian and everything, but I still got some of the Rev left in me. Some of the preacher man still left. And I need to know that you love me as much as I love you. That is my motivation for doing this. Other than that, I'd be doing something else. I'd be a jazz musician or conducting a symphony orchestra. The Lord said, no, you got to do this. I didn't want to do it at first either, but when he finished putting the weapons on me, I learned to love it. Between 100,000 and 40,000 years before the present, there came a group out of this original group of 200,000 years ago, whom the scientists call Eve, Mother Eve, as a code name, mother of all living. Well, she produced out of that group, out of her loins, out of her body, came forth what was known as the Nubian, or we called Nubian Grimaldi, in Afrocentric scientific circles. Now, in Eurocentric scientific circles, they call him Grimaldi, simply because in modern times, the fossil remains were exhumed first in Grimaldi, Italy, near Mentone, France. They put the name of the Italian on it. But those of us who know who this is and where it came from, when you study the physiognomy of the bones, we find that they're Africoid, and we know that he came from Nubia. So we put the right word with it. Nubia, you might have found him in Grimaldi. Before he got there, he was Nubian, so we called him Nubian Grimaldi. Now, when they dug up these bones of these Nubian Grimaldi, they found something very strange to them. And that is, these people were buried in the fetal position, the same way they were when they were in the womb of their mother. clutching to their breast Africoid voluptuous figurines of the female, of the African woman, clutching them to their breast. As they went to investigate further, they found out why that was. That is because there was a common belief 100,000 years ago on this earth, when there was no one on this earth but African people, that when you died, if you did not take something into the bosom of Mother Earth that produced you, which represented the female energy on earth, you could not make it to heaven. That's where the first idea of angels came from. You had to have something which represented the African woman. Why? Because they understood well the way you got here. Certainly, the father planted the seed. Well, it was only the woman who had the cosmic mechanism to hold the seed for 40 weeks of gestation, had all that she needed while this child, this embryo grew and then became fetus and all the, however the changes go, and rearranged her innards all 9 months so that she goes through gugab changes in the process, which I think we brothers have somewhat come to understand. We know when to break camp, too. As we know that's not the woman. There's something going on inside that she's part of a cosmic process, and whenever there's change, there's a degree of trauma connected with that change. But trouble don't last always. You know. And she nurtures that child within and sends those thoughts and ideas that this child will come forth out of their width. Then when the time is right, when nature calls, she delivers the child with pain and agony to the world. And when all the pain is over, and they tell me it's horrendous at times, she looks at this baby when they bring this baby to her and forgets it all, they tell me. She said, that's my baby. Now, there can be no greater love than that. No greater love. She starts out with that kind of love. Then she takes the baby to her breast and nurtures the baby. Because, see, back then they didn't have any nipples and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't nothing like the real thing, baby. That was all they dealt with. Natural, organic things. That's why they lived longer and were healthier, bigger, stronger people. And when she nurtured this child, that's the first he knew of being cared for and protected. She was the first to teach the child. And the father would take them later and teach them, and it was the mother who was the first to teach the child. Therefore, everything of value to him or her or to a child in the seminal stages of their lives could be traced first to their mother before anywhere else. And that's why all over the world you heard people pray, Mother, Father, God. Because the first understanding you had of a being which loved you was your mother. Your understanding of your father's love came later. But the first understanding, because she was the one carrying you. But Bill Cosby said to his wife, you had it last. So she's the one that you had your first conscious contact with. Therefore, in the consciousness of the ancient world, there was the mother God before there was the father God. Understanding that the creative force is a force that cannot be defined. Yet when they sought to relate it to something that they could identify with in their everyday life, they identified it with that thing which was foremost in providing for them, which was their mother. All right, you understand? You all right? Brothers, you all right? You know, I'm not putting us down because I'm one of us. But because I know this, I can be a better one of us today. You will find in the book, African Woman, the Original Guardian Angel, illustrations of some of those figurines, and they were fine. They were voluptuous. I mean, she was a standard of beauty all over the world at that time. One of them is taken from the Sex and Race, Volume 3 by Joel A. Rogers, and the artist concept of this woman. Now, this woman was so beautiful that all over the world she presented the standard of pulchritude. All over the world at one time, and understand the way in which I'm saying it because it's not intended to be crude, it's not intended to be crass, but the world thought differently then before our minds was messed up by foreigners. We're messed up by foreigners than it thinks now. The stereotypologia or ample posterior of the African woman was once worshipped all over this globe. And everywhere you try, and brother say still is. I sure worship it every day. Sisters passed by some Muslim brothers on the corner one day. They were getting ready for their salats. I don't know what they were doing. They were deep in contemplation. This sister walked by and the brother hollered, "Stop her now!" He couldn't contain his thoughts any longer. He had in some way worshiped the queen of the universe. And that's just not a physical or a sexual connotation. Although that's all we thought it was, it's deeper than that. It goes way back in our psyche, way back in our history. It was revered, and if you disrespected it, you were put out of your misery. It was the supreme religious symbol a couple of 100,000 years ago, because it was from here, out of the womb of woman, which was contained in the crucible of her fine, voluptuous posterior, that humanity was brought forth into the earth. That was the first heaven, as Dr. Yusuf bin Chana told us, that man knew anything about. That was the first paradise. And being born again meant to have the privilege in the midnight hour to return to heaven. And even at 51, I try to go back as often as I can. I don't know about other people, but I have not found anything greater than that. That's the highest form of prayer I know. And that's the way I approach it too, because I love and adore my woman. An attitude of prayer. And then when you both get to praying and shouting and calling on the Lord, then you know you have made contact with the source of life. That's the way it's supposed to be for us. I don't know how it is for anybody else, and I really don't care. But for African people, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's sacred and divine, and it is never to be debased, because your energy and power is in that connection with one another. It's more than physical. It's a spiritual happening. And when you understand that, the physical get better. Because you know the physical has its limitations. For that moment, you know the moment I'm talking about, when you caught between life and death, and you say, "It feels so good, I wish it could go on." No, you don't. Not unless you're ready to leave here. But when you get it spiritually right, it goes beyond that. The feeling gets greater even. More wonderful. Because it's all a part. But I hope you understand what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the natural. I'm talking about African people. I have no concern whatsoever, except for the way it has affected my people in regards to the ambiguous sexual dimorphism of Caucasians. Which means they couldn't decide what to do with it. Whether to be male or female. It was clear to us what we're supposed to be. In fact, the Caucasian male, until he came in contact with the African, didn't even know that he had a role to play in the whole procreation process. He wrote that now. I didn't write it. Caucasians wrote this about themselves, so I'm not picking on white people, so don't get angry with me about that. I'm talking about what they wrote in their own books. All right, let me name one of the books so you'll know that Brother Shaka isn't being mean. But that's the thing I have to deal with my people so much sometimes. Or the man talk bad about white folks. Oh, get that out your mouth. All you should be concerned about is that I love you. If you want to deal with white folks, that's up to you. I can understand what for, but that's your right. But don't hold it against me for telling historical truths.
Wake us up.
That's all I'm saying to you. I don't want anything bad, any bad blood between us. Because you're all I need, and with you I can do everything. And I can't make without, there's no me without you. So that's my appeal to you. I'm not trying to appeal to anybody else in the world. But I'm taking the time to let you know this so you won't think I'm being mean and use that to be turned off with me. And that's written by a white woman, Barbara G. Walker, in the book Women's Encyclopedia of Women's Myths and Secrets, that Caucasian men, before they were given knowledge by African men, thought that a woman giving birth was directly related to the afterbirth which came forth. All they knew is they saw some blood with the baby. So they figured that and they were jealous of the woman for having the power to bring life into the world. They wanted that power, and so they thought if they went back and copulated with each other, they could conceive. On the other hand, they thought that if they castrated themselves, the blood from their genitalia would produce life. This was their understanding. When they found out that didn't work, then they put the white woman up underneath them, kept her down as long as they could in the position of a slave throughout all of their civilizations, including Greece and Rome and all of the other European civilizations which followed. And they did not even begin to learn to appreciate her until the Moors out of Africa went into Spain and into France and into Italy and spread into other places of Europe and was standing on the balcony singing a song to their women, and they say, what is that? That's serenading. They say, what you do that for? That's how you get the joy and the privilege of being with a woman. Oh, I thought all you did was knock her in the head and drive her home. Africans understood quite well, and their whole science and everything in their life was built around the way that the woman's body functioned. Calendar would not exist today if it were not for the fact that our ancient high culture scientists were not observing the correlation between the woman's body, the movements of the earth, and the movements of the celestial bodies. And that's how astronomy came about. They also built the calendar off the cycle of the moon at first, the lunar calendar, the 28-day cycle of the woman's body. Then they added the 2 days to represent the male and female principle, because they knew that there always had to be an interplay between the om and the or as the Chinese call it, the yin and the yang, in order for there to be a balance anywhere in the universe. There's only one people I know you say you cut the woman out and you can get to God. Now, that's why they have always preached one thing and done another. Because you cannot get to God unless you go through the female energy. Unless the male and female become one, then and only then are you able to reach the point where you can know the Creator. Now, I can't go into that in detail now, and if we have a question and answer, I'll do my best with it. But that's a scientific reality that our ancient high scientists practiced called Mayathuna. And they taught in their ancient text that to know God, you must know woman. As one Hebrew scripture says, that woman is wisdom, and wisdom is the breath of God. To understand that, the magnitude of that, you understand the power of the black woman. That's your mama. If your mama is powerful as her son, what are you? Think about that. Even when we get to, I'm still 200,000 years ago, let me speed it up a little bit on this journey. There's another illustration in the book of the coffin of several pharaohs of ancient Kemet, which is misnomer Egypt. When they were buried in these coffins, they carried forth the same tradition of their Nubian Grimaldi predecessors. And instead of just taking the Africoid figurines, some of which had wings on them, and that's where the concept of angel came from, because they believe, let me stop a moment and focus on that for a second. If I lose my place, bring me back here. I need you to do that for me. You know how preachers are. They start out here and end up over there. But all roads lead home to Mother Africa. They believed because the woman had taught them everything they knew in the beginning stages of their lives, that she must have this special connection with the Creator that no other one on earth has. So they identified her with birds because they saw birds as messengers of God, a messenger of the gods of the spirit world. So they put wings on her statuette when they were buried as a symbol of the fact that spiritually they could be taken to the next level of existence in the universe. That was their deep understanding of it. If she brought me forth here into life, she also is the bosom of Mother Earth, which receives me when I leave here, and she can restore unto me life eternal. I came forth from her, I go back to her. I lived in eternity before I got here. I will live in eternity when I leave here. Her force, nature, energy brought me here. Her energy will lift me up. And that's where the idea, that's why you see angels in cemeteries today. Of course, the concept has been corrupted, co-opted, and everything else by Europeans who say that angels are neuter males. There were no male angels in the ancient world. We'll deal with the meaning of the word angel as we go on. You all right? You still with me? You want me to shut up, whoop, and go home? Let's come back to the coffin. Not only were they buried with the figurines, they had elaborate portraits of women painted in the top of their coffin. You say, throughout eternity, I want this woman on top of me. Throughout all eternity. And some pharaohs even went so far as said to have her on top is not enough. They have one painted on the bottom, say, I want to be surrounded. I don't want to leave it. I can't do it. They say, so at least I can take an image with me. Sister, you made an impression on the world. Don't you ever forget that. And still, your beauty is the standard of a people who psychologically hate themselves. They hate themselves because, as Dr. Frances Cress Welsing has pointed out in her research and studies, the Cress theory of color confrontation, that they are suffering from several pathologies, or pathologies that are manifested in these several manners. And that is the numerical inadequacy. That is, there are far more people of color on earth than there are Caucasians. When Caucasians emerged from the caves about 20 or 25,000 years ago, they were in a sea of black people. That put him in fear. And Michael Bradley, in the book, The Iceman Inheritance, another white scholar, so I know you'll take his word for it. I know you better than that. I'm just saying that. I know y'all don't feel that way. But I know some of my people will take his word for it when they take it. Said he sat by his cave, shivering, because he didn't have the knowledge of fire. You had to get that from the Nubian Grimal. Shivering and afraid of everything around him. And he emerged out of the ice pockets of Europe, thoroughly inculcated with xenophobia, which is the fear of other people, and came in contact with a people who had xenophilia, the love of people and cultures, which was the African. That's why we were always somewhere trying to save him, trying to save this, trying to say that's why we were the ones who created all the religions of the world. These were efforts to try to humanize. As one writer has said, I tried to save a thing that was not real. I gave to it my life and my time, but oh, how bad it made me feel. A ray of light no matter of light came down to my brain, so no matter how real your mind may make it seem, and since then I'll never be the same, a revelation is what the song says. Again, I'm not saying that to be mean or evil. I believe that African people have given, putting this historical information now in the context of today's realities, we have given enough time, energy, prayer, and suffering to the rest of the world. And everybody else is moving on ahead, having benefited from the knowledge we gave the world. Even lied about it and said it was theirs, that we never had anything to do with it after they stole it from us. And that which they can't understand, they hide. They can't understand all those hieroglyphics. They hide that. The main thing is to keep you away from it. And they believed at one time, once they had brought us down so low in slavery, we would never rise again. But they didn't know we are an extension of the God force in the universe. It was inevitable. We had to come forth. The original people on earth. You can't keep that down. That's truth eternal. Back in the antebellum slavery days, white women got tired of white men. I wish they never did, as far as I was concerned. Diving on African women's ample posteriors. So they went and got them some bustles and bows and put it on the back. Even then, it was still the sign of worship all over the world. And all religious symbols, I don't care what religion you belong to, can be traced back to the woman's body. I hope you question me on that in the question and answer period. I'm not going to tell you about it now. But if it comes up then, I'll be glad to deal with it. It'll be like throwing a rabbit in a briar patch. They even go so far as to inject stuff in the lips, to broaden the lips, full lips. Silicone instead of the button and bows, that's not enough. Because when they take the clothes off, pancake's still there. Injecting silicone. That stuff will give you cancer. She's risking her life to look like you, got you out here now, attacking your face, your hair, going up to modeling schools, tucking it in. Trying to look like her. She's put her insanity on you. African woman, you are the most beautiful creature on earth. You don't have to make up for nothing. You have it. Mother Nature and the Creator gave it first to you. Kissed you with the sun so you could have those beautiful features and all those shades and hues. And no sweeter taste in the world than a black woman's lip. And you ask any baby, say there's no sweeter taste in a nipple. Ask some brothers, they tell you that too. We all go back to our childhood someday. And I say that with all my heart and soul. Why am I so concerned about that? Because I'm getting tired of y'all spending all this money on stuff to make up. Make up for what? Anybody short, they're the ones that come up short. They know that. They run down to Florida every chance they get to try to make up for the shortcoming. Here you go back there a few years ago trying to bleach it off, they're trying to get, it's madness. You're suffering from a sickness that is not your own. Come back to yourself. When you look in the mirror in the morning, say, thank you for making me an African. I do it every day, every morning I look in the mirror. Even though they tried to bleach as much out as they could, I still got some. I got a lot. And I look in the mirror every morning and say, thank you, Lord, for making me an African. In spite of all that we've gone through and all that we go through, just to know that I am an extension of you, the first human being on earth. I am an extension and a descendant of that. There is nothing in the world that I face that I cannot overcome and conquer by reason of the fact that I came directly from the God force itself. Now, when you do that, what's somebody going to do with you? Because every day you know they got something to put on you. You live in a hostile environment, whether you're aware of it or not. There's always something coming at you. Psychologically, they're working on you constantly. You can't watch a movie. You can't watch television without them picking on you one way or the other. Getting back to these Nubian Grimaldi folk now, either synonymous with or immediately following them was a people of the Africoid stock who had been around so long we cannot trace their beginning. They were called Cushites, people kissed of the sun. And it wasn't just one of them pecks like if you go out on a date and sister didn't have a good time. Say, can I get a kiss good night? Here. Clock the door. But if she liked you, and you treated her right like a gentleman, and she can see that your soul is African like hers, she reach up in her mouth kind of part, the soul kiss. That's the way the sun kissed us, those Cushites. They were jet black, navy blue, black. And they were called Cushites, kissed of the sun. Greeks couldn't say that. They got tied tongue, so they say, people with burnt faces. That's the best they could talk then. So we taught them more. Don't take my word for it. There are Caucasian historians who will verify that. These people, these Cushites, emanated from the foot of the mountains of the moon at the mother of all rivers, the Nile River, the Mount of Kilimanjaro, there. And they traveled throughout the globe once again. And this time they established magnificent civilizations that are still being excavated around the world today. Wherever you go, there's evidence of the fact that the Kushite was there. So great were their deeds in the ancient world that the tales of the Arabian Nights are about their sea captains, the deeds which they did, because they established the great nations in Arabia first. So first, Arabia Kush. All the tales of the India, of the Krishnas, are about them, because it was first Hindu Kush, and down by the Ganges they established civilization there. In fact, today there are over 128 million Africans in India. We were all over the world. They even went all up into Europe and built Stonehenge and established civilizations up there. Everywhere you go. And some European historians, some Englishmen like Gerald A. Massey and Sir Godfrey Higgins and Albert Churchward, who tried their best, I got to give them credit for that, who tried their best to deal with truth. Kept calling them Egyptians because they couldn't tell it because they knew they were one out of the same stock. And what they were actually talking about were the Kushites were the first there in England, the first in France, the first anywhere. They traveled all over the world. All of the gods and goddesses in Greek mythology can be traced back to some king, some queen, some hero, some nobility of the Kushite. Every last one of them can be traced back there. When people go to church and say amen, the next time you pass a white church and you hear them say amen, you say, what you want? You call me? They're talking about the father of the Kushites, Amun-Ra. Septimus Dominus Supra. Amen. Yeah, that's us. Oh, you think I'm kidding, huh? Go get the book. It's a pictorial. Pope John Paul II.
Wake us up.
He has a cot that he sleeps in Vatican City. And before he go to sleep at night, to make sure that he can sleep safely and wake up the next morning, he prays to a black woman and child. When he gets up in the morning to get his day right, so he know where to go to get the energy, man. He talks to this black woman and child. So what does that say to you, brother? When you wake up in the morning, the first person you look at is what you pull your energy from. And if it don't favor you, you're not on the right energy wavelength. Not only that, you have insulted your mother. Because if you choose somebody outside of your race to be the mother of your children, you say to your mother, in actuality, I wish you had been somebody else. That's why I chose somebody else to produce my children. It's more than, color is more than skin deep. There's energy caught into that. We're not black by accident, and they're not white by accident. There are scientific reasons for that. And there are certain energy levels that you function on. Just like all colors have energy, you know that. You know, if you walk out in the sun with white, it will repel the sun. If you walk out in the sun dressed in black, you're going to burn up because it attracts the sun. So you tell me color doesn't make a difference? Keep walking out there in that black there in the sun. So obviously it makes a difference. It's a reflection of something that is inner. When a person is sick, they start changing colors. Let you know something is wrong where? Inside. Something inside is bad. And I tell you, I just can't take it. And how you look on the outside tells a lot about what's going on inside. The African woman, the original guardian angel. That's right. These people had, of all of their tenets of belief and faith, of all of their doctrines, which were great because they gave the knowledge of all science to the world, they had a high exaltation of their woman. Why? Because they knew this. The first house was built by a woman. Well, let me back up a little bit and take it this way. Let's have a little story time. Can we do that a minute? Well, you know, I'm part preacher, part historian, so we're going to tell some stories. Hope it isn't one you heard before, because we have a way of telling the same story over and over again. Picture now humanity in its seminal stages, as we talked about 200,000 years ago. Man wakes up in the morning, he's got to go shopping for groceries. Today, you wake up in the morning, you get in your car, you go to the nearest market, wherever you go. Not in those days. You picked up your bow, your arrow, and your spear. And you went shopping. Now, you could get breakfast, or you could become breakfast. It depends upon what mood the lion was in that morning. And if you ran up on Sister Lion, who is a far more proficient hunter than Brother Lion, and her children were hungry, well, you were breakfast. Well, now, Sister Sapphire, which is an affectionate name that was held all over the ancient world, and we'll talk about that later, I hope, and if I miss it, please bring it up to me again, got tired of her man being caught up in that kind of occupational risk. Right. She said, I got to do something about this. My man leave this morning and night, I got to sleep by myself until I get me another man. She said, I don't think I like this. And sometimes they be going on a hunt for days. She said, it get cold in the midnight hour, honey. And back then, African women as well as African males were very warm-blooded. Say, I need you next to me ever that night. So the Spirit of the Lord came to her. Said, Sister Sapphire, she said, yeah, Lord. Said, this is what you do, baby. So you go out there in that field, and just like when you were eating those berries as y'all were traveling back and forth in the hunter-gatherer stage, say, now there's a way that those berries get here. And you have to plant a seed, just like the man plants the seed in you, and you bring forth fruit. That's how you do it, sister. She said, yes, Lord. He let her out in the field. She planted some seed. It came to pass one day, Brother Man was coming home with a nice lion steak stolen. Hey, baby, look what I got. We're going to eat good tonight. Hey! Throw it on the grill, Mama. Because we weren't eating any raw meat. I don't know what other people were doing. We did not eat raw meat. Well done, baby, till it's crisp around the edges. So when she brought the steak all out and fixed it up as only she could, she also had on the plate some green things and some yellow things. He said, baby, what is that? She said, taste it and see. So he picked up some lima beans and ate it. This is good. Then took a little corn with it. Said, wow, this really tastes good. What is that, babe? She said, succotash. He said, Mama, I like this. Go good with this lion steak. In fact, I forgot all about the lion steak. It tastes so good. She said, wait a minute, baby, I got something else for you. Sister Mozella down there got something. I'll be right back. So she ran down to Sister Mozella, said, look here, sister, I got some lima beans and some corn. You give me some of them yams. And there began Wall Street, world trade. That's how I started. Right there and there. So she came back with them yams. And when he ate them yams, he said, oh my God, good God Almighty, yeah. She said, baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. I said, baby, can't nothing be better than this but you. She said, I got something for you. She went back out there in the grape arbor, where they had smashed the grapes, and they had set for some days. Stirred that up, put a little something in, and brought it back. He tasted that. Said, this sure goes good with food. Say, what is that? Said, that's wine, baby, homemade wine. He said, you know, a man could get used to this. I mean, I could stay here forever. She said, well, honey, you know you don't have to go out there messing with that lion tomorrow if you don't want to. I said, well, how are we going to eat? She said, look at this here. And that's not all. I'm growing some up there. I got some stuff over there called rice. We're going to eat a lot of that. And I got some old beans and things growing out there, honey, and some greens. Honey, you ain't taste nothing yet till you taste these here mustards that I'm pulling up out this ground this week. And then the sister down the way, she got apples and oranges and bananas and all that good. Oh, we gonna have a good time. He said, you mean I don't have to go out there and face that lion every day? She said, no, honey. You can stay over here and fix things. That's what you can do. Do something around here. See them stars and things up there? Are those things shining up there? What they are? Say, take a look at them, baby, and we'll figure them out, and then we stars, and then we'll know how to tell time and everything about watching them. See, but you ain't had time to do that because you've been busy chasing food. Yeah. So now you can sit your behind down and think about something other than your stomach. So that was the quantum leap with humanity, from the hunter-gatherer stage, from the biological state, to now a spiritual and mental state, because we're not only physical, we are mental and spiritual as well, and all three have to be harmoniously developed and balanced in order for us to be complete people. Now, there's some folk on this earth who still haven't gotten past the biological. And everything they do is material. But the African evolved beyond that stage a long time ago in the history of humanity. He come home one day, just as happy. He looked, wow, what is that? Here's this round thing sitting in the middle of the village. Say, what's that, honey? Say, that's a house. What is it? It's an extension of my womb. And it was made round to symbolize my womb. You know how good you used to feel when you were in your mama's womb? Can you remember? See, not quite. Well, lay down. Let me play some sweet music for you. Drink a cup of this grape here and let me sing to you. And then go back, way back in time. And he woke up, he said, baby, I had the strangest dream. I felt so warm and so good. And I was in a state, I was in a floating state. I was suspended. She said, you was back in your mother's womb, honey. And that's what this house represents. And it covers you and surrounds you and protects you just like that protected you. He came home one day, and there was a bunch of women out there who had built a whole lot of houses, and then they gave the man the plan and said, now you throw us a gate around that, and this will become a city. That's what it becomes. And so the great city of Zimbabwe itself is built exactly in the shape of the female vagina, with the temple or tower sitting there just like the clitoris of the female vagina. Now, we're talking anatomy tonight, and we can talk that. I hope you don't walk out here feeling shame about it, because you don't have any reason to feel shame about your person and your being. Now, once she did that, and she established the marketplace, she said we have to have a method by which people can treat each other right, because you got a lot of people coming into a particular area now. And that's when she came up with laws and governance. The African woman did this. And she went a step further. She said, now somebody has to rule over all this. I don't have time to rule over it because I have to go back and deal with education, with mathematics, with the alphabet and all that kind of stuff. I don't have time for this rulership stuff. Who's going to do this? I'll put my son on the throne. And the throne, therefore, was called in the ancient times the lap of your mother. But I'll come back to that again in a minute. I'm going to get with that in a minute. And there was the system of governance. And the African man and the African woman ruled the world then what? As equal partners. She supplied the power, he carried it out. And as long as he carried out that function, she looked up to him as king, and he looked to her as the mother of the universe. How wonderful that was. Man lived longer in those days under that system called the matrilineal system, where the property and the rulership went through the line of the female, where the female had the say-so. Human beings were not prone to be as violent. There was less bloodletting. Children came up feeling happy, feeling secure. But when the patrilineal system came in after the Eurasians and later Europeans had made their impact on African people, then there were more wars, more bloodshed, and the lifespan began to decrease. And it still decreases under the patrilineal system. The woman gave us life. Not only did she give it to us, she kept us going, fed us food to nourish and give life to the body, because we know flesh is death and takes life from the body. So she gave longevity to the body, gave you good, sweet, natural wine. I'm not talking about this stuff and stuff. The natural stuff. Put incense and perfume all around you, made your house comfortable, had her beautiful, succulent breasts to lay in when you came home. Well, no wonder they were praising her all over the world. That's everything. That's all. That's what everybody works for. And in her moments of need, of strengthening, she would come and fall in your arms and lay on your chest. And here you had the opportunity to soothe, to guide, to direct, to love, and to strengthen the mother of the universe. No wonder black men felt so powerful then. Just speaking of these same Cushites here, these same Cushites, later on in their history when the Greeks were calling them Ethiopians. Remember now, they were all over the world so long ago we can't even date their beginning. But during the Greco-Roman period, or now during the Greek period, when Alexander misnomed the Great, oh, the Alexander, honey. Because history tells us that's exactly the way he was. Could go north, south, east, and west. What you want to do, let's do it. That's how freakish he was. Well, he got it in his mind, I've conquered the Mediterranean now, and after the Chemitans, which they call Egyptians, were foolish enough to let us come and study under them, now we know their secrets and have come back and conquered them. Now we're going to the source of their knowledge and power, which is further south, down below the first cataract. We're going down into Kush, and we're going to conquer that too. Well, Alexander took his troops to Kush. And when he got to Kush, there was a big, black, broad-lipped, thick-nosed, bushy hair, fine, voluptuous Kandaki, queen mother, straddled across 2 elephants, were carrying her throne, surrounded by 100,000 Nubian warriors, each of them carrying a bow. The word Nubia means land of the bow. They had a bow in that land that no other men in the world could shoot but them. So big and so well made it was. And here stood these warriors, jet black, shining with the sun bouncing off of them, jaws tight, looking like the fruit of Islam and the Maccabees. She looked at Alexander. She said, you can come on up in here if you want to. He said, what you doing here, first of all, boy? Because the Egyptians and the Cushites called them children, the Greeks children. That's why there's no Greek philosophy. It was African theology, transmogrified. It wasn't even transmogrified. It was corrupted. So what you want? He said, I come to conquer the world. I'm Alexander. I come from Macedonia, honey. I come to conquer the world. See all these half-naked men? They're going to fight for me. She said, you can come on up in here if you want to. But like Kwame Ture said in our time, you got to bring some to get some. Well, Alexander looked at her, and you know how Sapphire can look when she get that hand on her hip and get to shaking her head. He looked at her, and he looked at 100,000 of her sons standing there with them bows. Haven't flinched, haven't moved. Said, something ain't right here. I think I best leave this alone. Alexander turned around, went back to the Chemitan Sea, which they misnomed the Mediterranean, threw a spear at it, said there are no more worlds to conquer, went home, got drunk, and died. If Sapphire don't put something on your mind, nobody cares. She can either strengthen you, you know how it is, brothers. She can either strengthen you and give you life, or she can tear you up, just like Mother Nature itself. There's nothing worse than you leave the house and things didn't go right with you and your woman that day. Lord, I hate that. I do, man. And a lot of times because you can't give in because you don't want to wimp out, so you just, oh, shut up, ma'am. And you know you want to go back. Lord, have mercy. And that's the day she be looking her best when you see her again, too. You can walk into. Same thing with women when you're out with your man. And a lot of times, this is what I found about Sister Sapphire. I learned about it. It took me a long time, brother. You must understand that the role of the woman in your life is always maternal, no matter what her function. Even your daughter, even your sister, even your cousin, your woman, your wife. It always ends up being maternal in some way. You are always her son at some time or other. You come into that. That's why black men call their women mama. It's a compliment, the greatest compliment in the world. Stop complaining about that. That's what you are. You're the mother of the world. And I like that song say, I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old dad. That's why when you marry out your race, that means you don't like your mother. I don't care what you say. That's a pathology which says you don't like your mother. Well, sometimes she'll get on your case. Lord. And once that mouth gets going, you can't stop it. It took me a long time to learn, and a wise man told me, he said, that's her weapon. That two-edged sword to come out her mouth. And she can say some stuff to tear your soul 6 ways from Sunday. Now, your weapon is your brute strength. So, and you cannot out-argue her. I have tried it. I cannot do it. Her mind is so much faster than mine. And even when I go away and think it over and come back, she still done jumped 6 days ahead of me. So what is your natural response until you grow up and become a man? In your childish state, what do? You grab her. And then she look at you and say, I suppose that makes you a man, huh? So what you when Sapphire gets something on her mind, even if you can whip her, and some of these sisters can do, man, you know, you grab one of them you wish you had. But even if you do what you shouldn't, because your mother, that's somebody's mother. You got no business whipping on anybody's mother. And even if she isn't anybody's mother, she has the potential to be somebody's mother. And if you got to be snatching and grabbing on her, that's saying a lot about you as a man, that you haven't grown up yet. A man doesn't have to do that. No African, that thing they showed on Shaka was a lie. That's white man's story. No African would hit his mother, all his troops would have leaped on him and killed him. They wouldn't have waited until later to stab him in the back. They'd have stabbed him right then and there. No, it's not your mother, an African? Hit your mother? No, that was unheard of. That's sacrilegious. So, brothers and sisters, are you still with me? You will also see another illustration in the book of the winged Isis. The Greeks call her Isis. Her proper name is Auset in the Kemetan language. And on her head is a throne, which we'll talk about later. And there's definite African chord features there, and she has wings, which shows here again another stage of evolvement in the concept of the African woman as an angel, as a guardian angel. And that's where the modern concept of angels came from today, the winged beings of ancient Kemet. There's a chapter in the book entitled Sapphire Eve, Divine Mother of the Universal Egg. I can't tell you all about that now, but I think you will enjoy it when you read it. And we have an illustration to go with that, which shows Ta, one of the fathers of the ancient gods. And let me explain this word gods to you. It means forces. The African knew that there was only one divine intelligence in the universe. And that divine intelligence had elements of the male and female energies within it. Now, I don't want homosexuals to say, see, they are too. No. They were separate and distinct energies which worked together. And nothing can be created even on the spiritual level unless there's an interchange between the male and female energies. And the female cannot have all of that unto herself, neither can the male have all of that unto himself. They each have a part which must be joined together. So let me make that clear, be very clear to you. Now, these gods or forces represented natural phenomena. Men and women who had lived on the earth, who had accomplished great deeds like Auset and Osar, misnomer Osiris, were Cushites who went into the Nile Valley about 18,000 before the Common Era. We say Common Era, or before the Common Era, because the whole world does not pivot its time around the birth of Jesus, which nobody knows which occurred anyhow. Because the date they have given him, what that's BC and Anno Domini AD, in the year of our Lord is 10 to 12 years off. So you don't know when that is. So our scholars, such as Dr. Ben and others who led the way in that direction, say BCE, before the Common Era, since so many people do adhere to that calendar, acknowledging the fact that there are other calendars in the world as well. The Muslim calendar, the Hebrew calendar, and other calendars. The Chinese have their calendar. The Dogons have their calendar. Other people have their calendar. The Yoruba, Akan have their calendar. But since it's a calendar that seems to be used around the world, we call it Common Era or before the Common Era. So 18,000 years before the Common Era now, this black man and black woman go into the Nile Valley and establish the science of agriculture there. It had already existed, for it was created by the African woman several 100,000 years ago, probably. 40 to several 100,000 years ago. But they bring this culture. The word agriculture has in its core, in its center, culture. That's the basis of all culture, science, learning, and understanding. Civilization. That is tied into the earth. When you leave the earth, you lose your connection with the universe. That might be why we're acting so crazy in these cities on this concrete and stuff. Still, because there's a layer between us and the earth. We don't have enough contact with the earth. Well, Ptah symbolized the earth, or Ptah. And there's a picture of Ptah shaping the cosmic egg upon, as you shape clay. He's shaping it on a potter's wheel. That's a heavy scientific symbology there. You got some time for me to deal with it a little bit? You sure? Are you getting tired? Let me know now. I'm not going to be much longer, though. The egg represents what our scientists understood and knew was the ovaries of the woman's body that receives the seed, and new life is developed in it. So they said, if that's the way we came here, obviously everything in the universe came that way. So they called the whole cosmic scheme in the universe the what? Divine cosmic egg. And at other times they referred to it as the divine vortex. Just like you see a tornado, a vortex. If you can go out of space and look down, you see many vortexes moving along the earth here. Just watch the water as it's going down the sink. You see that circular fashion that represented the vagina of woman, the fallopian tube through which we had to come to get here, to travel our journey to life. That's how heavy the science was. So that's why you hear in all of the cosmogonies of the ancient world, they talk about the cosmic egg that hatched forth all things in the earth. That's going back to the African woman as a divine mother force. Ptah, the male energy, sitting at the potter's wheel, which represents the 360 degrees of the circle of the universe, all things go in a cyclical fashion, sits there at the potter's wheel, and his shaping of the egg is symbolic of the fact that the male implants the seminal seed into the female's vagina, and it becomes a part of the egg in the womb. That is what that represents there. That's symbolic, just that. That's some of what it represents. It's a science that is so heavy that we could spend many lifetimes trying to understand it and only have just begun. Even in the Christian church, European Christian, because there's a distinct and quantitative difference between the African Christian and the European Christian. I've discussed that before, and I know Bishop Olu can do more, did a good job of handling that. So I leave that with him today. And other brethren of the African Christian persuasion, they have a ceremony of baptism. What does that represent? It represents returning to the womb of the mother, being born again. The water, the sacred water, is the sacred fluid that was in the woman's womb. The water that breaks just before you come here. That's what that represents. So to be born again and being baptized, you must once again be symbolizing returning to that which brought you here. So even that, all right, don't believe me then. But look in the book When God Was a Woman. I believe is that by Merlin or either by Eric Newman, one of them. Anyway, I have the quote in African Woman, the original guardian angel. And I have there an illustration from that book with a European have on their church wall of an angel with wings baptizing a man in an urn that's shaped like an egg, because it symbolized the womb of woman. That's what baptism is all about. When you go down in that water and you come up born again, say, hallelujah, black woman, mother of the universe. So that's what it represents. One of the reasons why I speak of the guardian angels here, African women, the original guardian angels, is because there are many images on the ancient tombs that are now there in our motherland, in Egypt, and in Kush, and in Somalia, and in many places around the world, where the pharaoh is shown flanked by two feminine entities. One is Isis or Osset, the other is Nephthys or Nebuchadnezzar, or Nebuchadnezzar. And when you see this image, you will see that their arms become wings. And that's what gave me the idea of the African woman as a guardian angel. Now, in order for this pharaoh to have power, he must be surrounded by the wings of the feminine energy. On the head of Isis is the throne, or Osset is the throne. And the throne was called in ancient Egypt the lap of Isis, or the lap of Osset. And there's a picture also there in the book of Seti I, Pharaoh Seti I, in the year 1320 before the Common Era, sitting upon the lap of Osset as a little child, because when you sat on the throne, you were now taking the lap of your mother's power, and it was through her that you ruled the world. Consequently, we look in the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, the first chapter, the 26th to the 28th verses, and we have him having a vision of the deity, the supreme deity in the universe, and said he sat upon a what? Sapphire throne, which was the symbol of the value and beauty of the African woman in the ancient world, the sapphire stone, which they call lapis lazuli, that beautiful blue stone. So even the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, was sitting on the throne of his mother, because that is what the throne represents, the lap of your mother. There's another picture of a throne with wings on it to symbolize your mother protecting you, because it was through the wisdom, the inspiration, and the attunement that the woman had with the creative force, and she infused, because you always see these women either standing behind the throne of the pharaoh or surrounding it, but they're touching him in some form because they're infusing him with the power and the wisdom to rule justly. And that's why every pharaoh, even foreigners who ruled in the land at times, always went to the south to marry the women, because they were the women who were closer to the gods. They had the wisdom and the clairvoyance. As a matter of fact, the only preachers in the world for thousands of years were women. Here you got folks who won't let women preach in their church. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but I got to tell you this. Come on, women. Ain't no women supposed to be. Before there was any other preacher, there were women preachers. And they were called the oracles. And when you want to know something, you went to the oracle. And the woman sat on a throne that was over water. We always had to be around that running water, man. Not running water. Y'all older folks know something about that water, don't you? Especially when you put that glass of water in them Psalms by the head of your bed. You know what I'm talking about. You got to have that water, that conductor. That's how all life was conducted on the planet. It makes scientific sense. Electricity has to be conducted that way, by that power. Everything moves by water. 70% of your body is water. You don't believe that? Stop drinking something for a while. She sat upon that water, and even in the days of Pianki the Great, as he was going to take the land back from the foreigners and reestablish the 25th dynasty, which was not the only Nubian dynasty in Egypt. Most of the dynasties were indigenous African dynasties. He now, on his way to battle, stops off at the temple of Amun-Ra to meet with and to confer with the oracle, which is the high priestess who wears the leopard shawl around her, who came from the land of Kush. Shante Sana, brother. That's what the protection of guardian angel meant. Many times when the Pharaoh had to make a decision, when he went to her, she could give him direction. And they call it in today's world what? Woman's intuition. It was that there was a special connection between the mother force and the Creator. That's not to say that man could not make contact with the Creator. I didn't mean it that way. But women seem to get there faster. It might have had something to do with their suffering and the pain of death. I don't know what. We're still trying to figure that out scientifically. But most of the clairvoyants I've ever met in my life were mostly female. I know some males, but the ones who have been most accurate that could see things have been the females, which I have met. The ancient priests believed, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. You could not know God until you had known woman. And here you got religions today where they practice celibacy. How you going to know God like that? You cannot experience life until the and the is connected. That's life. And that's life eternal. That's how everything operates in the universe. The atom, the positive, the negative, those things have an interplay with one another in order for for matter to exist, for energy to continue to take various tangible forms. That must be an intangible forms. Always that feminine, masculine energy is taking place. Unfortunately, what has happened is an evil force, as Reverend Jerobogi said in his sermon in the Black Messiah, an enemy has done this, has come in and totally corrupted it. So we don't even talk about love anymore. Let's do it. Let's do the wild thing. When before, bloods would walk up and down for days in front of the village, rhapsodizing to the sister. And sometimes the stuff would sound so good to her, she wanted to break out there and go grab it. The villagers said, wait, not yet. The elders said, yeah, that's how they did before they could get married. Sometimes the brother would be out there for weeks. He'd go back to his hut and compose what he's going to say the next day. And when the elders figured he had said the right thing out of his mouth, and that he understood what he was saying, they said, now, you can come on in here and we can start the rest of the ceremony. That's what that meant. That's why the sisters love to rap today. Brothers, you got to be sincere about it, though. And sisters, you got to look beyond the words now. I know sometimes you say, well, I don't hear much, so when I hear them, let me vibe on that. I think I'm almost finished now. I want to share just a few more things with you, and we will close it out. I'm going to read from African Woman, the original Guardian Angel, page 68. And I hope I have had some type of consistency in this chronology that you can kind of hold in the mind until you pick up the book, if you don't already have it. And I'm sure everybody here tonight, even if you have a copy, you're going to get a couple to give to your friends. And while you're doing that, don't forget to get a copy of Shattering the Myth of the Man Who Freed the Slaves while you're at it. Had to put that in there for a minute, brothers and sisters. I'm sure you don't mind. One of the compelling features of Kemetan iconography and scenography is winged beings in attendance to and protecting the pharaoh, the most significant being that of Osset and Nephthys, with arms that merge into wings. Among the many nations that borrowed, that did what? From and adopted this type of symbology, and we have spent a lot of time talking about what the symbology meant. Oh, we touched on it. We really haven't covered it in its entirety. It's a great, great mystery you'll be searching for all your life. That's how vast the mystery of the African woman is. But just let me get some of it. I'll learn the rest. This type of symbology was Phoenicia, Sumer, Persia, Babylonia, Assyria, and India, all which were originally Kushite nations in the extension of its global empire. And at a much later date, the Hebrew Israelites, who came on the scene as a nation, began to come on the scene as a nation between around 1240, and their writings went on, were put into some kind of fashion, which you come to know as the Septuagint Old Testament, around 200 before the Common Era. All these initially African nations, in turn, modified and adapted the winged female emblems of Kemetan high culture, scientific, astro mythology. Read the book, it'll explain what that means. It's all tied into astronomy. All the mythology was a sign, a symbol of something in nature which actually existed. Just like on your computer today. When you go press the button on the computer, you know the sign you press is not in fact the information itself, but that sign, that one sign calls back that information. That's what these mythological symbols were, to call to mind or to crystallize a concept, a thought, a precept, or a principle. Mostly the principles, scientific principles of nature. So no, we did not worship many gods and goddesses. We saw the Creator as one, manifested in many ways throughout all the wonders of nature. And so we worship or reverence those aspects of nature as manifestations of the one, the unmoved mover. All these initially African nations in turn modified and adapted the winged female emblems of Kemetic high culture scientific astro-mythological symbology to serve their particular historical experiences and cultural needs at the time. We understand that what we know about angels, or our concept of angels today primarily, comes from the Judeo-Christian mythological, theological background, from our church affiliations, mostly Eurocentric Christianity. That's where the concept comes from. What I'm saying to you, it did not begin with them. It was modified by them to suit their particular experiences and need, and after a while the female principle was completely cut out. Because in the ancient world, even in Jesus' day, they understood that the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost meant the Father, Mother force producing the child. This is how, capping it all up now, the concept of guardian angels was born. It began with the Nubian Grimaldi celebration of the manifold attributes of the African woman, which was exalted to even higher levels of reverence by the Cushites, who spread the concept all over the globe, stylized by the Kemetans and icons of Osset, Nebuchadnezzar, Heteru, and a host of other female deities. Then grafted by the surrounding nations, including the Hebrews, into superhuman symbols of divine communication and protection. Originally, the word angel simply meant one thing: messenger, with nothing else attached to it. As it comes to us today, angelos from the Greek, which goes back to the Arabic Malik, such as in Al-Hajj, Malik El-Shabazz, name of Malcolm, or Malek in ancient Hebrew. It simply meant messenger. And it was given to woman first because she was believed to be the messenger of the gods, or God to the rest of the world. She was the seminal inspiration to all the world. Now they become superhuman beings that are males, or neuter males that are neither male or female. That, of course, comes from a twisted culture. And so they have Jesus, consequently, who was historically married to at least 2 women in his life. Yeah. You know, I wouldn't say it if I couldn't prove it. It's on the tape, the marital life of Jesus and his son Barabbas, and I document it. And they have him saying, well, if a woman marries this man, or I forget exactly how the story goes, they approach him with this, and he dies and she marries another man, when you get to heaven, who do we belong to? And he comes back with something off the wall like, in heaven men will be as angels, so it won't make any difference. That energy goes throughout the universe. And Jesus knew better. And he probably didn't say it. Probably I'm not attacking anyone's belief, but you must understand that the New Testament has been mistranslated at least 150,000 times. So you must have an understanding of your history, because it is your African history book that somebody took and just jangled, totally tore apart. You can put it back in its context if you know your history. If you understand what was happening in that time, you can put it back in some of its original tongues. All right. Again, I'm not attacking anyone or anything. I'm stating historical reality. And whether we or what we, groups that we're connected with, want to accept that or not, it has nothing to do with the fact that knowledge will continue to increase and we will continue to evolve as a people. So if some of us don't want to accept that, the people who didn't want to accept the electric light couldn't stop it from being invented. It's here. And even later on, they start using it. The formulation of the idea of angels, which covers a time span from around 100,000 BP to the present, is predicated upon the once universal respect and reverence for black women that permeated the ancient world. This is how the whole idea of angels came into being, from the reverence, respect, and adoration that all humanity had for hundreds of thousands of years for the Queen Mother of the universe, the original black woman on the motherland Akebu land, misnomer Africa. In closing, I want to share something with you. You got another minute or so? Y'all are very kind people. You know, I haven't been to Houston in so long, it seems like I'm trying to make up for lost time. Like when you first get home and you've been away long, the woman say, "Wait, baby, don't you want to take a rest?" There's a book in the Bible, our African history book, one of our African history books, called the Song of Solomon. Actually, it is not Solomon's song. It was written by several kings in ancient Kemet long before him. It is a song that was often sung at weddings because it showed the friendship and the love that males and females had for one another at that time in the world. And I put it in the New African Translation, as much as I could decipher from the original Cushite and Kemetan tongues, what little I know of them and have studied of them. So what you're about to hear now of the Song of Solomon is the New African Translation. Okay. You know, everybody else got, you got the New English Translation, you got the Jerusalem Bible, the Moffat Translation. Have all those folks now translated, why can't we have one? And being as I am a minister in the nation, one of the ministers in the New African nation, I think I can have translation too. If you don't like it, you'll throw it back at me. If you like it, you'll accept it, and maybe it'll be passed from generation to generation. And they'll say, there was a brother that lived one time named ISHAKAMUSA, and this is what he did. But that's not my primary reason for doing it. I wanted to demonstrate in this, intend to demonstrate the awesome, overwhelming love and affection that black men have always had for black women, and vice versa. Listen to it now. How beautiful are thy sandaled feet, O prince's daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet, filled with the most delicious wine. Thy belly is like a heap of hearty wheat, surrounded by deep purple tacker lilies. Now, this is in your Bible, you believe it or not. The words may be a little different, the thought is the same. Thy two breasts are like two young gazelles. Now, that's exactly the way it is in the Hebrew version. That are twins. Thy neck is a tower of ebony. They mistranslated it of ivory. But I knew they said ebony back then. Thine eyes like the aquarium pools of Meroe by the golden gates. Thy nose is as the tower of great Zimbabwe, which looketh towards the plains of Manopatapa. Thine head upon thee is like the finest cocoa, and the hair of thine head is like the wool of Persia. The king stands in awe of thy wondrous beauty. How beautiful and how pleasant art thou, O love, for delights. This thy voluptuous statue is like to a palm tree, and thy breasts to clusters of grapes. I said to my secret self, I will go up to the palm tree. I will lovingly caress the fruit thereof. Now also thy breasts shall be as clusters of the vine, and the smell of thy nose like apples. It's fine, sister, man. And the roof of thy mouth like the best wine for my beloved that goeth down sweetly, causing the lips of those who are asleep to sing. Thou hast captured my heart, my sister, my love. Thou hast enthralled my soul with one of thy dark eyes, with one cowrie shell of the elegant necklace worn about thy neck. How wonderful is thy love, my sister, my friend. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thy body than all spices. Thy lips, O my beloved, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments like sweet incense. A garden enclosed is my sister, my love, a spring flowing from a fountain that was sealed. Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, lavender with spikenard and saffron, and calamus and cinnamon, and all trees of frankincense and myrrh and aloes with all chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a wellspring of living waters, and streams from the Nile. Now she answers him back. This is an ancient African Hebrew wedding ceremony where they talking to one another. And she says, I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. And there will I share with thee my love. The mandrakes give a smell, and at our gates are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old, which I have laid up for thee, my beloved. And then she goes on to say to him, awake, O north wind, and come thyself. Breathe upon my gardens, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and partake of his pleasant fruits. And then they were brought before the priest and married after that ceremony. This poetic verse from the ancient scriptures in some way demonstrates the great love and friendship, because they were friends before they were lovers. See, friends are careful about the way they treat each other. Lovers can treat each other mean. But if you're friends, you won't do those things to one another. So sometime when things don't go right between you, the first thing you have to stop, especially when the argument just doesn't make sense any longer, and nobody's going to win, you need to look at one another and say, first of all, we are not the enemy. I am your friend. First and foremost, I may not understand this, I may not agree with this, but I am your friend. When you reaffirm your friendship, that's the first stages toward working out the rest of the relationship. So you must be friends first. Can I tell one more brief closing story? This is the last one. I may have told this story here before, but I want it on this particular video. And I like the story so much, and I hope you do too. They tell me that someplace on the great mother continent, there lived in a particular land of mighty African people, in their towns and villages, a wondrous people with a great civilization. And among them was the custom of the honor and reverence of the African woman. And among the kings of these villages, there was a paramount chief over them all, the King of Kings, who had a daughter, a princess, who was most lovely to behold. And every young warrior wanted that princess in his house. Some warriors brought, now we didn't buy our wives, I want you to understand that. What you had to prove to a family before you could take a woman home was what? I can support my family. And she wasn't leaving there if you couldn't. In fact, you'd have to live there for a while to show that you could, before you could take out the village. I think some of those standards they had back then, we couldn't make it. Wouldn't have as many divorces as they have. So they decided for this woman to bring to pass an ordeal or trial that would really prove the magnanimity of this warrior that would receive this woman. And they said, there's a great mountain here that we are at the foot of, and it has been many centuries since any of our ancestors was ever able to go to the top of that mountain. The strong kings and queens of the ancient times were more powerful than we are now. No one has been able to survive the ordeal of climbing that mountain. But we do have the sacred records and texts they left behind, which tells us at each sea level you go to what type of flower, what type of flora grows in that region. And the warrior to come back with the flora from the highest portion on this mountain will receive this woman in marriage. Well, the first warrior took off, digging in the dirt. Dawn, they were beating the drums, singing the music. He went up the side of the mountain. The next day, he came back. He had an orange lily in his hand, tiger lily. Said, it's a beautiful flower, but you only reached 200 feet. That's not high enough. The next warrior came up. And all the time there was a brother there that this sister wanted, and he wanted her. But in those days, you didn't go strictly on romance, because they knew that romance has a way of fading out sometimes. And you have to have something stronger than that to go on. You had to prove yourself. This brother took off up the side of the mountain. He was gone 3 days. While they were still beating the drums and singing and dancing and feasting, he came back all ragged with a blue flower in his hand. They said, wow, we haven't seen one of those in a long time. Said, bring that flower here. That's a blue gardenia. that Lady Day used to sing about. My wife told me they don't exist, but I still believe they exist. They say only Billie Holiday saw one. He came back with a blue gardenia. They said, oh, it smells good. Look at that. This brother went way up there. They said, yeah, about 700 feet. He did pretty good. Now his brother said, well, I got to outdo that, man. And he was snorting like a bull. Let me go. Let me go. He looked at that sister. Yeah, shoo! Like a streak of lightning. Cut a path through the trees. Oh. He was gone about a week. They were singing and dancing and playing. And lo and behold, here he comes stumbling out the woods. He held in his hand a red flower. They said, wow, whew, that's got to be at least 1,000 feet above sea level that he is gone. Oh, this must be the one. And the girl looked at the warrior whom she loved in sadness and said, in her eyes said, baby, I don't think you're going to beat this. I don't think you're going to get around with this. It was a good idea, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'll be with him, but I'll be loving you. But the brother's love was so great, and he was so inspired by this African angel. And the elder said, you sure you want to go through with this, son? I don't see how you can get that far up and come back alive. He said, it really doesn't matter with me now. He took off and went up that mountain. A week passed by. 2 weeks passed by. On the 21st day, they said, all right, that's it. The brother with the red flower receives this woman, the princess, into his house. Right. They were getting prepared for the wedding ceremony. The sister had resigned herself to this being her warrior. And as they were gathering together to prepare to do the vows, they heard a song in the distance. Ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no river low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby. A ragged, torn, worn, emaciated, thin figure stumbled onto the plain, holding an object in his hand, saying, ain't nothing like the real thing, baby. Nothing like the real thing. The elder said, stop the ceremony. Let's see what this boy got in his hand. And they looked at what he had in his hand and said, Lord, have mercy. That's the black narcissus. We don't know how far it went. What happened, boy? What happened while you were up there? He said, how high did you go? He said, I don't know. But this I do know. I saw the sea. They said, that's it. You can't get no higher than that. When you can look over in the sea. She's yours. Brothers and sisters, our time has come. Let's look out over the horizon and see the eternal cosmic sea. For that is our road to home. Thank you very much.